regime plans to do it is through Lebanon. Folks, we've seen this play out now for weeks. Iran orders its Lebanon-based terror proxy Hezbollah to carry out attacks against Israel despite an ongoing ceasefire. 5 Israeli soldiers were killed and 13 more injured over the weekend thanks to multiple Hezbollah attacks. Some ceasefire. Yet when Israel responds to these Hezbollah onslaughts like any sovereign nation would do, Israel gets blamed for being reckless and endangering a broader deal with Iran. Why? Because sadly, Iran's regime has been able to link a potential Iran deal with what happens in Lebanon. Israel has pounded Hezbollah and left it in tatters. Iran knows that Hezbollah is in very big trouble and badly wants to save the crown jewel of its proxy network. So, it not only demanded to have Lebanon included in the Memorandum of Understanding that was signed by President Trump last week, but Iran also has ordered Hezbollah to continue attacking Israel so that Israel gets the blame when it responds, and the U.S. then calls for Israeli restraint. Do you see how this works? Even though our leaders would obviously never tolerate a terror group on America's borders launching rockets at the U.S. from Canada or Mexico, yet Israel, as usual, is held to a different standard. It's an impossible situation for the world's one and only Jewish state. That's why during talks in Switzerland these past 2 days between the U.S. delegation led by Vice President Vance and Iran, I've been watching the Lebanon factor very closely. The two sides reportedly agreed to a new deconfliction mechanism in Lebanon involving Israel, Hezbollah, and regional partners. We'll see how that works out. Here's more on the negotiations from the Vice President.
The Qataris, the Pakistanis, our friends at Israel, we're all working towards regional peace. There, of course, are going to be sometimes disagreements about precisely how to get there, but I actually feel great about where we are in Lebanon. There's still some additional wood to chop, but we're going to keep on working at it. And what we're trying to accomplish here is something very simple. Through diplomacy, through working together to transform the Middle East, where Iran and the Gulf have been at war with each other, or at least have had very unfriendly relations, where Iran has been a driver of regional instability. Now we see a future where everybody can work together to promote peace and prosperity for everyone.
At the end of the day, we're apparently expecting Qatar and Pakistan to be honest brokers, and Iran to rein in Hezbollah, something the regime has refused to do for over 40 years. Iran has also reportedly now agreed to let inspectors from the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, into their country to make sure the mad mullahs are not developing nuclear weapons and restarting their nuke program, which has been destroyed by the U.S. and Israel. This sounds great on the surface, but remember, IAEA inspectors were also let into Iran in previous years, and it didn't go so well, because the regime is what it is, as Secretary of State Marco Rubio laid out this past weekend.
Every problem in the Middle East tracks back to Iran. Hezbollah, Iran. Shia militias that are destroying and threatening Iraq, Iran. Hamas, Iran. The Houthis, Iran. Assad when he was in Syria, Iran. The only time, everywhere you turn, they're behind all of it. They are a destabilizing, dangerous, evil force that had to be dealt with. They have to be weakened.
Amen. Now, negotiations with Iran are just beginning, and there's already so many questions. Is a credible deal possible with a radical Islamic regime that has a long history of lies and double talk? We break it down with Batia Ungar-Sargon next. For generations, American Jews saw the political left as their natural home. But our next guest argues that the very movement that once championed Jewish inclusion has increasingly embraced ideas that leave little room for Jewish identity, Israel, or even America's founding principles. Batia Ungar-Sargon is host of Batia on News Nation and author of the powerful new book, The Jews and the Left. Batia, always great to see you. Hey, I want to dig into the book, but real quick, Iran and this pending Iran deal and the talks in Switzerland. Batia, you've had a lot to say about it in recent days. What's your view? Why are you against this memorandum of understanding? First of all, what are your problems with it? And where do you think this is all heading?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. It is such an honor to be here with you and with your audience. I hate this deal so much. I think that we destroyed them militarily, but now they think they won, and they are right. This deal is a total capitulation. It's a total humiliation on the world stage. They proved that we could destroy their economy and destroy their navy and destroy their ballistic missiles, and they could bring the great United States to its knees with a few mines in the Strait of Hormuz. And as an American, I find that intolerable. The disdain with which they are treating us on the eve of our 250th birthday, I just find it utterly unbearable to be suffering such a humiliation at this time.
Yeah, Batia, we had the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism literally on its knees. Then we let them off the hook instead of finishing the job. I'm still baffled by it. We'll see where this is all heading, but it seems right now that Iran, in a sense, is calling the shots. They've never won a war, but they never lost a negotiation, and it seems we're seeing that again right now in Switzerland.
It is so true. And I will tell you, the lesson that my rabbi gave over in synagogue this week, I think, is really apt, which is we all just needed a reminder that God is in charge, right?
Yeah. Very true, and well said. Hey, speaking of which, okay, the left, and you were formerly pretty liberal Democrat, and the Jewish people, by and large in America, American Jews have voted Democrat historically. But Batia, you detailed in your great book, we've seen this shift with the left really turning not just against the state of Israel, but openly anti-Semitic against the Jewish people writ large. When did this shift happen?
It's such a great question. The question I get asked most by Christians is, why are Jews Democrats when the left hates them and we love them? And this book is my love song to my Christian neighbors, the people who have always had our backs, because throughout American history, the Jews were considered a cherished part of this great nation. The founding fathers saw Jews as founding partners. In fact, they saw us as the living, breathing embodiment of the source material for the civilization that they were trying to build here, which is, of course, this idea that our rights are not a gift from some government. They are a gift from God. Our founding fathers felt that they had a covenant with God to protect the Jewish people. And this continues. You can see it in Christian communities across America to this day. American Christians are the first people in human history to organize their religion around the idea of protecting Jews rather than oppressing them. And there is just this immense tragedy that this story was lost to history. And that is the story I wanted to reclaim. This unique bond, this love affair between Jews and America. We've lost sight of this first 300 years of American Jewish history because Jews sort of migrated to the left in the 20th century. Some of the reasons they did were really good reasons. For example, they were working class at the turn of the century and they were very exploited. And so they believed in labor rights and the dignity of labor. And they believed in FDR because he was both for labor and for capitalism, which is very much how American Jews saw themselves. And of course, they were very overrepresented in the civil rights movement. But everything started to change in 1967 when Israel became a very powerful force, and that the left could not abide.
Yeah, all of a sudden, David became Goliath in the eyes of the left. And Batia, you do such a great job in the book unpacking the history of the Jewish people in America and the indispensable role that Jews have played not only in the founding of our country, but up until today. Talk a bit more, too, about the Judeo-Christian biblical values that really built this nation. Look, that all started over 3,000 years ago on Mount Sinai, the values that shaped our nation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this idea that our rights are imbued in us by our Creator, who wanted us to live free, to worship Him from a place of freedom, right? I mean, that is the building blocks of America, right? And the founding fathers saw this as a value in the Torah, in the Old Testament, in the Bible. They didn't think that a human could come up with such a revolutionary idea. They thought it was there in the source material. And so when Jews started coming here, they saw us as the embodiment of those precious values. The idea that there is an objective right versus wrong, that God wants us to be good, that God wants us to respect the liberty of our neighbors. These were all ideas that were associated with Jews in the beginning of this country.
No doubt. The God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of the Bible, the values that were in the Old Testament, in the Torah, as you said, Batya, and as you write about in the book, that shaped our nation. Folks, be sure to check Batya out on News Nation, her great show, Batya. The book is called The Jews and the Left. Pick it up right now. Amazon.com, wherever books are sold. Of course, follow Batya on X across social media. And we're not done. Coming up, October 7th gave an open door to vicious anti-Semitic rhetoric. So how can we combat the madness and fight for Western civilization? More with Batya Ungar-Sargon after the break. Don't miss talking to Batya Ungar-Sargon, author of the eye-opening new book, The Jews and the Left. Batya, it seems that the October 7th massacre was a watershed moment for anti-Semitism in all the wrong ways, of course. We have the woke right, Tucker Carlson, etc. They've reared their heads on this issue, but the left really has been vicious. Segments of the left, certainly. We're talking about college campuses and beyond. We think of people like Zohran Mamdani, the mayor of New York City right now. They've really come out just very openly and transparently with their anti-Semitism. Do you see that? Do you see that October 7th was a turning point in a sense?
Absolutely, and I'm so glad that you brought up the woke right, because they share an ideology with the anti-Israel left, and it's this. They both think that someone else is responsible for all your problems, and it's probably the Jews, and it's probably Israel. They both think that you do not have the agency to improve your life. They both think that you are not sovereign, that we are not sovereign as Americans, right? They'll say Israel controls our foreign policy. Are you kidding me? You think anybody controls Donald Trump? But it's part of this grievance culture that has infected, unfortunately, the far right as well, to where young people who have a gripe, a very legitimate one, against their opportunities in this country, suddenly want to blame everybody else for their problems. That's a very leftist and, in my view, a very effeminate way of being, right? Not to take responsibility for yourself, but also not to believe in your sovereignty as an American, in your agency, and your power to change your fate, which is, of course, the building blocks of Judeo-Christian society, is that there's a difference between right and wrong, and we always have the power to choose right. Whatever your circumstances are, you have agency, you have free will, you have your relationship with God. And it's very sad to see young people on both the left and the right embracing this defeatist despair, this worldview that there are oppressors and oppressed, that, there's powerful and powerless, and somebody else is always at fault.
Yeah, Batya, so well said. And anti-Semitism is the world's oldest hatred, most persistent hatred, and the Jewish people have been scapegoated more than any people in the history of the world. But the Jewish state also the safe haven for the Jewish people. America always has been as well, but Israel, to me, Batya, in these times of rising anti-Semitism, the importance of Israel seems to be looming even larger now in these perilous times.
Yes, although I have to say, as I always do, I'm going down with this ship, man. The anti-Semites are going to take the United States out of my cold dead hand. They are not going to win. There are too many people who are on our side, including all the people watching this right now, as I know very, very well. There is rising anti-Semitism, but here's the truth that so many Jews don't understand. We are not an oppressed minority here, and we never have been. Part of the reason I wrote this book is because so many Jews struggle to understand this. They backed the wrong pony. They sided with the people who hate us, sometimes against the people who will always have our back in this country, our Christian brothers and sisters. That is what this book is about.
Yeah, Batya, great breakdown. I see the tide turning in Europe, obviously. America, more than ever, is the firewall for Judeo-Christian Western civilization and for sanity. Speaking of which, last question. Okay, the Jews have overwhelmingly been on the left, but now we see this turn in the left you describe in great detail in the book. Will Jews continue to vote for left-wing parties, for Democrats, or will the tide turn there?
I'll tell you what I tell everybody, which is I know a lot of Democrats, including Jewish Democrats, who would very happily vote for Marco Rubio. And I also know a lot of Republicans who would never vote for J.D. Vance. So do with that information what you will. I don't think we're likely to see a huge movement of Jews to the right because sadly, a lot of them have the woke mind virus. They go to university, they have a lot of degrees. Over 60% of American Jews have a college degree compared to 35% of the nation. A lot of them have graduate degrees, and you just get inculcated into this oppressed woke mind virus. And it's very sad and it's very hard for me to say, but a lot of liberal Jews, they are not religious. That is their religion. And they can't quite see past it. They would rather denounce Israel, denounce their fellow Jews, than admit something has been wrong and join the right. And that really does break my heart.
Batya, so well said. Folks, the book is fascinating and timely. It's called The Jews and the Left. You can pick it up Amazon.com, wherever books are sold right now. And, of course, check Batya out on News Nation. Follow her on X. Batya, great work. Great having you. We'll see you again soon. God bless. Keep it up. And coming up after the break, we're talking to journalist Stella Escobedo about Israel's perspective on the agreement between the United States and Iran, plus the resignation of Britain's woke Prime Minister Keir Starmer. That's next. Stick around. Welcome back to Stackelbeck Tonight. For years, Lebanon has been held hostage by Hezbollah and its Iranian masters. But now, in a stunning rebuke of the Islamic Republic, Lebanon's president is openly accusing Iran of using his country as a bargaining chip in its negotiations with the United States. Watch.
It's not your country, it's our country. It's our obligation. It's not your job to interfere into our country. I reject this statement totally because our people being killed, our houses being destroyed. They are using Lebanon as a chip, bargaining chip in their negotiation with the United States. It's unacceptable.
I'm joined now by Stella Inger Escobedo, an Emmy Award-winning journalist and host of Stella News on YouTube. Stella, always great to see you. Hey, for decades, Iran has treated Lebanon as a forward operating base, using Hezbollah to attack Israel and project Iranian power across the region. Stella, how significant is it to hear Lebanon's president publicly call out Iran's regime, although it would be nice to see Lebanon with a bit more skin in the game and getting involved militarily against Hezbollah?
You nailed it. I mean, his words are really nice, right, Eric? But at the same time, Hezbollah is really in control, and it will continue to remain that way until LAF is really serious about taking out Hezbollah. I mean, in 2005, a democratically elected prime minister was assassinated by Hezbollah, and Hezbollah still remains in the country. So again, the words are nice, but it doesn't go far enough because, recently it's not a story that gets covered often, and I talked about it on my platform, but the U.S. Treasury sanctioned 2 LAF, military high-level people who were working with Hezbollah. So they have a really big problem with infiltration as well. So again, it is nice to hear the president to come out and say it, but they're just words, really.
Yeah, and the LAF is the Lebanese armed forces, the Lebanese government forces, which should be going against Hezbollah, but not always the case, Stella, as you just mentioned. Speaking of talks going on, negotiations right now, Switzerland, the U.S., and Iran with Pakistani and Qatari mediators. Iran now reportedly, Stella, says it will accept IAEA negotiators, but in the past, that hasn't gone so well, needless to say. What are your early returns on these talks in Switzerland?
I mean, look, President Trump always talks about peace through strength. He is trying to have these negotiations through, of course, Vice President J.D. Vance. But do we believe the Islamic regime? I mean, for decades, they've obfuscated, they lie, Do we believe them? I mean, these are the same people. It's not like it's a regime change. It's like level 3 of the same exact minds. So it's nice of them to say that, but they've done this for decades and decades. What's to say that anything has changed?
Yeah, Stella, so well said. Great points all around. This regime, they are who they are. They've been this way for 47 years. It ain't going to change. But we do have change in the UK. Keir Starmer, British Prime Minister, announced today, Stella, he's stepping down. You've talked a lot about the threats to Western civilization, Judeo-Christian civilization, and that Europe is in big trouble. No place more than the UK with wokeness, mass migration. We can go on. Starmer leaving, give you optimism, potential game changer. How do you see it?
Look, I think the UK has a huge problem. They've had, 6 prime ministers in 7 years. They have a lot of social issues. They've allowed mass migration of Islamists. They have massive problems. 250,000 women have been raped by the Pakistani gang rapes. They haven't addressed it. You have, Starmer's party that was catering to the left, and the Green Party was saying he wasn't going left enough. It's a mess. They have a lot of issues. They are in disarray, and unfortunately, as we watch what's happening in the UK, we are starting to see a little remnants of that, creeping into the United States of America as well. We've got to be careful. We have, the primaries that are coming up in New York City. DSA candidates are running, DSA growing. It's exactly what is happening in the UK, and it's scary.
Stella, great job as always. Folks, follow her on X, across social media. Check her out on YouTube. Stella, great job. God bless. We'll see you again soon. And coming up, my final thoughts on negotiations. What will they yield? What does the Bible say about it? More after the break. Stick around. Welcome back to Stackback tonight, folks. As we wrap up here, a call for prayer. Look, Vice President Vance, that delegation, and President Trump, of course, are dealing with evil men in the form of the Iranian regime. I think of Jesus saying, be wise as serpents, as innocent as doves. But I also think of Proverbs chapter 2, verses 12 and 13. Wisdom will save you from the ways of wicked men, from men whose words are perverse, who have left the straight paths to walk in dark ways. Tell me that doesn't summarize the Iranian regime. So keep our leaders in prayer. Great show tomorrow with the leader from Brazil, Eduardo Bolsonaro. Exclusive interview, folks, you won't want to miss. Until then, God bless you. We'll see you.